You're listening to That Gratitude Guy podcast with David George Brooke. That Gratitude Guy. Learn about how gratitude turns what you have into enough through stories of motivation and inspiration. Wherever you are in your life and whatever you're going through, That Gratitude Guy is here to help you achieve great things and live a happier, healthier life. Change the way you live today right here with David George Brooke. That Gratitude Guy, starting now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to That Gratitude Guy podcast. I am, in fact, David George Brooke, That Gratitude Guy, your host. And whereas I say every week, my mission is to have guests that relate and recall moments of their lives that were propelled and energized by utilizing the power of a gratitude mindset. The goal is to harness the power of that gratitude and illustrate its many benefits. You can expect a deeper dive into gratitude's immense power, a gratitude tip of the show, or maybe a gratitude nugget, how you can become a gratitude believer, and maybe 1 to 3 takeaways from today's show. I will be taking the month of May off. I wanted to mention this, and then starting back on June 4th to be exact, where I will be doing a show once a week, every Friday, as opposed to the first and third. So I'm excited about that. In May, I'm going to be taking a big trip with my son and then moving and a couple of things. So it's going to be kind of out of pocket. But I do gratitude keynote speaking and gratitude coaching. And you can reach me at thatgratitudeguy.com. And those contact information, as well as my guests, are in the show notes, of course. So speaking of guests, let me get on to my guests and save the majority of the time about interviewing my guest. My guest is Michael Charest, who is a 17-year veteran business coach, consultant, author, and speaker. He founded Coach and Grow Rich and is now the president of Business Growth Solutions, a company specializing in helping solo and micro businesses attract more clients, grow their businesses, and live the prosperous life they deserve. Michael has coached over 500 individuals and 1,500 small groups, clients, and delivered more than 100 live talks and webinars, and created over 1,200 pages of business content, as well as a self-help book, From Grunt to Greatness. He loves working with business owners where he can help them bring their magic to the world. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Dang. Oh my God. Thank God you're done with that intro.
Who is that guy anyway? So I always like to start off with a little context. Tell the listeners how you and I met.
Let's see. I hope I get, oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot. I think I know. Probably what, 10 years ago? We met at the Magic Castle.
That's correct.
In Los Angeles, California. Do I get to tell people what city you live in, or is that a secret?
Absolutely.
So David lives in Seattle. At the time, I was living in Kansas City. Los Angeles?
I think it was Kansas City.
I used to live in Kansas City, or Los Angeles. But to make a long story short, I was a speaker at a conference that was held at the Magic Castle in Los Angeles, the famous Magic Castle. And I think I did a decent job doing my presentation. And so Brooker came up. I think I met you at the bar, didn't I?
I think so.
I think so. We were having a drink at the bar. So
the most memorable thing I remember was flames out of your wallet.
Because it was at the Magic Castle, I had to learn how to do a magic trick. I didn't really have to learn, but I did. Mm-hmm. And Brooker, I was the only speaker who did a magic trick, right?
That's right. And you'd think as the Magic Castle, you'd think that would be logical for people, but you're the only one that seemed to figure it out.
Hey, I'm the only one that went for it. So basically I made my wallet ignite on fire.
Exactly, which was very cool. So if you think back on that event, one of the things I always want to ask people is the impact that people have had in their lives. And do you remember, besides you and I met and become coaching clients and good friends as well, which is just such a bonus. But would you think back on some of the people you met at that particular event, because that's where you and I met? How did they impact you? Some of the different personalities that you met, from high to low to high.
Yeah, what a great question. It's funny. I knew Marcia Weeder. Have you heard that name, David?
Yes.
Yeah, she's a pretty famous life coach, but I didn't know her personally, and she also spoke there. Mm-hmm. So we got to meet personally, and I'll tell this very quickly. The way we met is we were both locked out of the Magic Castle because
how funny.
We rented that conference rented the whole place, and they didn't want people thinking, the Magic Castle was open. So she had just spoken and had come out to take a break, and I was out taking a break, and we went to go back in and it was locked. So we introduced ourselves to each other. So that was great. And then let's see, in fact, it might have been you and I when we had lunch together, David. There was this gal who was there alone. She, came there from Ohio or something, left her husband and 2 kids, for the weekend, but just showed her dedication and how committed she was. And you and I and her had a great conversation at lunch, and we've been in touch probably 3 or 4 times since then. Not like you and I, where we become friends, but
Right.
It's amazing. It really is a small community when you're dedicated to this stuff.
Well, and one of the things that I think about, I define gratitude. I actually did a talk early this morning in Kansas City. Speaking of your old place, actually Shawnee, Kansas, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
I had to get up at 4:30 because it was a 5:30 my time talk. And then I'm in a seminar today and then the podcast. So it's been kind of a busy day, but I think, and I remember this when I met you, and this is what I think is such a compliment, is that you just meet certain people that you just can tell you're going to be friends. And it's so instantaneous. And one of the things, because I talk about gratitude all the time, is, are you focusing on the person's strengths? Are you focusing on the things that they bring to the table, that the connection that you have, or are you thinking, well, this person isn't dressed right, or they're not talking right, or whatever? And so I remember that conversation at lunch. And so as I think of people, and then I think about gratitude and how I always like it, I guess, that they'll come up with a couple of nuggets or something we can take away. But before we get to nuggets, there's a couple of people I'd love you to talk about in your life, getting to know you as well as I have. Specifically, your mom, your brother, Julie, just some people who have impacted you in a big way. And how has your relationship changed as you looked at them, really key people in your life, and how they supported you?
Well, my mom, you met my mom, and she was my best friend, and she passed away this May. Will be 1 year. So
Wow.
I just lost her, and she was literally my best friend all through until she died. And I ended up hiring her to be my speaking booker, my one who does my speaking booking. And so she booked this talk where you and I met.
Nice.
And so worked for me for 15 years and so much more. I could go on forever. And then Julie, my sister-in-law, so my brother's now ex-wife, but at the time wife, she also worked with me. And she and my mom formed an even better relationship, working together for me. I say for me, with me. I mean, we just had a blast. I made a commitment to hire my family. And then later, my brother ended up working for me for the coming with me to my live events and doing setup and the audio part. And so it's been a family business the whole time.
Yeah.
And, I'm proud to say my family's my best friend. And something you just said a little bit ago, like, you're so right. There's people out there who, when they meet somebody, they're looking for the negative, and that's what they think of. And I think probably people who listen to this podcast, we're the exact opposite. Like, it's noticing only the good things. Sure, if we're not. We notice the negative things too later, but certainly give people the benefit of the doubt. It's far more of the positive. And that's how it was working with my family, because they probably weren't the most perfect employees, but I didn't care because they were family.
Well, and it's interesting to me, it is a choice. And I'm fresh off a talk several hours ago, so it's always on my mind, but especially after a talk, so I'm thinking about something I may want to add or subtract to the current talk that I've learned or read about or something. But one of the things I do is an exercise where how they view somebody else. And I usually have people pair up when I was in person. And so now I have them doing it just by themselves on Zoom. And I ask them for 30 seconds to put yourself in the shoes of your biggest cheerleader. And how would you describe it's called the You Are exercise. You are talented. You are creative, all those kinds of things.
You did that with me. It's
you
incredible.
And I did that. And it's really cool. Yep. But then I once had a guy come up at one of the talks and he goes, I'm curious about your talk. He says, how come you don't have them list their shortcomings? And I said, what? I'm the gratitude guy. What is this? The shortcomings guy? We're going to find the negatives. And I don't understand. What kind of question is that? And of course, he's the same one that looked in the gratitude journal. He says, I notice you write in this every day. And I said, did you hear the talk? Were you here at all in the last hour to see what I was saying? But you just made me think of a good question, Mike. At least I think it's a good question. I, having had children and knowing the relationships with parents to children and grandparents and this type of thing, I'm always shocked when on the one extreme, I've actually heard of situations where somebody disowns their parents. And I think, how can this be? They raised them, they created them, they raised them, they changed their diapers and so forth. What was it about your mom that made you have her be your best friend, which is just as polar opposite as you can get of that? What was the synergy there that made that happen?
What an awesome question. We all love our moms, but my mom, just the most awesome, loving, caring, funny, awesome, dedicated mom. I'm 54 years old now. My mom certainly treat me like an adult, but she would joke like, once you come out of the womb, I'm your mother. You could be 70 and I could be 100 and I'm still going to be your mother. And so, and she was in every step of the way. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you eating well? And how are things? And just unbelievable. Yeah. And then working with me and just getting to experience that together. It's just, I feel very, very blessed.
Well, and it says a lot about you. And that's why I would be curious about how maybe as you communicated with them, you're talking about your mom as your mom and an employee, and then your sister-in-law, then your brother, and so forth. Do you feel that one of the things, because that's something, family dynamic is a very interesting thing. And again, yours is about as polar opposite as the people that haven't even spoken to each other in 20 years. I meet people all the time. I haven't talked to my brother in 25 years.
No.
Did you notice was it something instinctive, or did you actually consciously think, I've got to make sure I show my gratitude or be my appreciation for these people, or it just come naturally?
Conscious. So, and by the way, I want to quickly say my dad, because my dad passed 14 years ago. So, that just in case your listeners are wondering, well, where was his dad? He was a great dad, but he passed away young at 67 years old. Wow. But when he was around, he was different though. He was quiet and more tougher, frankly. We were a little nervous around him. He was a disciplinarian, but we had a great relationship too, but very different from my mom. My dad was not my best friend. I loved him and, we were close and we played golf, but to answer your question just now, I don't know how or why, that I would have to think about that, but I made a conscious decision probably 25 years ago that I want to be the best son in the world. Like that's literally, and I put it on my dream board. Not a great son, not, really give back to my parents. I want to be the greatest son in the world. And of course that's impossible, or what even is that? But that was like my mantra. And then I went and said, well, if you're going to do that, you might as well be the best brother in the world too. Mm-hmm. And so I did that, my brother and his struggles, and 20 years later, still trying to be right there for him. So yeah, I'm kind of proud of that. I don't think many people declare.
Do you know, because that's a tremendous attitude, to say the least. And as I mentioned a couple of times, the other extreme, when I go, how can you think that? That's your mom, that's your brother, your sister, but I want to be the best son in the world. Do you know where that kind of came from, or how that?
No, and that's what I was just thinking is I would have to, after this show, like think when and where did that happen? Just, it wasn't one of those aha things where you like, boom, you have a lightning bolt and you remember it. It just must be, you know what, Brooker? It was probably me being grateful, I love my mom so much. Maybe it was something she did that day. And God, she's just always been there for me. She's always so supportive. That's probably what it was. And I just said, I want to reciprocate. I want to be this for her too. It's probably something like that simple.
That's neat. And one of the things that triggers a thought for me when you say that is, and I do this exercise at the end of my talk called the 4 T's, where people text, telephone, tweet, or tell somebody how grateful they are to have them in their life. And so I would hope for any of the listeners today that maybe don't have that kind of relationship that you had with your mom, and even with your dad as well, but as you say, he was a little quieter, but to maybe take the opportunity to reach out and call them or text them or telephone them or do something just to say how grateful you are to have them in your life.
Why not?
It's what's that?
Well, why not? Right?
Oh,
it'll be good for that person, and it'll be good, but not only the person your listeners call, but it'll be good for your listeners. It's so true.
It's so true. And yet I always laugh too. It's one of the final things I do on the talk, because they tell me, they send the text, and then when we're wrapping up, they show me the text, and from the person that got the text, and it says, I'm grateful for you too. What do you want?
And of course.
And right? At first,
I love Like, you never do this. What are you with? Some kind
Exactly.
of
What's up with
self-help
that? Or another
seminar?
one was, are you sure you sent this to the right person? And it's like, gosh, but and I think about, I'm very grateful for you for a number of reasons, but I'll give you one that comes to mind is I always think there's two polar opposites. There's a have and the have nots. There's a lot of things that are extremes. And one of the ones I love is there's the know-it-alls on this side and there's the lifelong learners on this side. You've always been a lifelong learner. I have. And one of the things I've noticed that I learned from you is probably at the top of the list, because I kid you about it once in a while, but I've always talked really fast. And so I talk so fast and I think, man, I'm impressed, because if I can talk this fast, think how fast I'm thinking in my brain to make these things I'm going to have come out of my mouth. And I'm thinking, okay, calm down. And so the problem with that is sometimes things come out I don't want to come out,
Right.
and I'm talking too fast and thinking and not making sense. So I met you and I've learned to go, give me a minute. Just give me a minute. And it's the best. And you even kind of,
you were going.
and you go,
Literally,
I just
like,
love you.
okay,
You go, just
can you just
give me a minute. And I kid you about it, but I so respect that, because you're formulating your answer and it's not a knee jerk and it's not just, okay, here's what I want to tell you. It means you're listening. What is it? The listen to understand as opposed to listen to respond. You're listening to understand. I think that was Stephen Covey. And so it just makes such a big difference in things. But I don't want to get too far away from another subject I want to ask you about. And that is, I'm fascinated by your career, and I'm not going to tell all the people to go through the different iterations, but you've kind of been in and out of several careers. And you mentioned being in golf, and you're in the country club world, in the business growth systems. How have the different careers kind of impacted how you, again, look at the people? I think how many clients you've had, 500 people we mentioned, for example, of clients, coaching clients. And how did that relate to in terms of maybe the gratitude piece there and appreciating what they brought to the table and what you were trying to help them with?
Unbelievable. Yeah, like just being a coach. I was just literally, today's Friday, as you know, obviously, and I had two calls today, and I hung up from these calls, and then part of my next little project was to map out my week for next week, and I'm like, my God, your clients are awesome. Like, truly, like, I hang up from these calls today, and I'll be honest, I woke up a little crabby today. I'm not used to needing to order oil for cold weather, and this house is oil, and it's the middle of April. I didn't expect to need oil. Make a long story short, my oil tank ran out. I woke up, it's like you could see your breath in my house. I was worried about my dogs, kind of not in a great mood. And then I have these two coaching calls, and I'm like, they helped me help them.
That's so cool.
Ridiculous that we get paid to do this for a living. And then one of the clients, it was kind of a challenging session today. And I said to her, I'm not feeling great about my service to you today. I'll just be honest with people. I'm not looking for a pat on the back. Was today okay? Like, did you get from it what you needed? And she's like, yeah, it was kind of hard. She's like, you're a little hard on me today, but I think I really needed it. And she goes, and I'm grateful. She goes, I'm grateful.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Of course, I thought of you.
Wow. Did you say I'm about to be on a podcast now?
Yeah, I did, actually.
Oh, that's
she
so
actually
cool.
said that. I'm grateful to you that you can have a hard coaching session with me and be patient and then ask me if it was okay. She's like, I've never had anybody do that. And she literally goes, and I'm grateful. And I thought,
and is there something was there something specific that kind of energized you that either one of the clients said or reminded you of, or something that made you think, gosh, I'm getting more out of this call than they are almost?
Well, and again, I practice what you've taught me to do, which is that gratitude journal and being so focused. So of course, my daily discipline, I might miss some days, or in a month, but the daily discipline of doing that helps. Uh-oh, doggies. So hold that thought. May I?
Yeah. The dogs are out. While we're waiting for the dogs to get put away, let me just remind everybody they can see on video the Brooker's Daily Gratitude Journal, available on Amazon. That's exactly the book I was talking about earlier, the Brooker's Daily Gratitude Journal. Template made with a little quote for every single day. You can buy it, and it takes 5 minutes. There's a little saying in the upper left-hand corner, says, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. If you write about it, it empowers you. On that call this morning, I was reminding people that it is something about writing that plants it in the brain. And it's another nice thing about it that I notice is when you've got a written record of things, you can go back and reference it and see what you were thinking or feeling on a certain day. And it's really been nice because I've had some days where I had a tough day and I thought, what was I thinking on that day way back when? So anyway, Michael's back. Go ahead, Michael.
I'm so sorry.
No worries.
I'm so sorry. So having that discipline really helps that you taught me. And so you enter the day and the week having that, and then you're more aware of when you're feeling it in the moment because you've been preparing since the morning. So then when you have a client like say something like she did today, your focus goes to it and it manifests even more.
And I think it's interesting because you have coached me and as we said, we've become friends. And so I do coaching as well. And one of the things it's funny you mentioned that too, because I'm grateful for the profession. And I also have to add that I just am fascinated by sometimes when you go, just give me a minute, you're listening, you're formulating, and I kid you about it, but it's very impressive. But what's so interesting is that we forget I've just become such a better listener. And there's been times like I've researched guests and so forth. And I think, I know, I don't have to do any research on Michael. I know what the types of things I'm going to ask him, but it's based on what you've said. And I think sometimes a lot of people, when they're listening or coaching, they don't hear and they just fire one question after another. But in many cases, so many people, it seems, are poor listeners. I think they're probably just ecstatic that there's somebody listening to them. In this case, their coach in the form of you.
Absolutely. There you go. Being a listener is a very, very important trait, in large part because it's a trait so few people have. And so when you're in the service business or the healing business, the helping business, it's the number one most important trait you can have. And I think you're right. People are very, very appreciative to have somebody in their life who listens to them.
Absolutely. Exactly. And because of another part of your career, again, back to relating to the type of people, did you notice a significant difference between the people you interacted with as coaching clients and then the country club world? Was that really different? And if so, how?
Well, the country club world, I hate to say this, but by nature, by the fact that you are a country club manager, you're doing pretty well in life financially, at least, right? You know, the clubs that I managed aren't $60,000 to $100,000 or more just to join, let alone the monthly dues. And so you're pretty successful in that way, whereas my clients are kind of more, I would say, regular people. And I'm not judging one as better or than the other. But I'm so careful to say this because I don't want to lump people. Those that have money, generally speaking, didn't feel as grateful to me. It's almost like, I don't know if it was too easy for them or they were tending to look at the things that didn't go their way or were that they were frustrated with. And again, I'm being careful. Whereas the folks not at that level of at least financial success, and they're working on that maybe with me, they just seem to be more appreciative of the little things.
Right. Well, and
Doesn't
you're
mean
right.
it's full.
And you're right to be careful with it too, because we all want to judge. And I think whatever judgment I had when I was younger, I don't have that much judgment now. But I think that one of the things that I've noticed is that if I look at my friends and acquaintances and people that are in my life that have been for 40 or 50 years, the people that seem to have, and I try not to generalize, but the people that have the most difficulty with their children are the ones that have the most money. And I just think that's interesting. The basic person with the nice, whatever 9 to 5 job, whatever, if you have that, is their kids are phenomenal and they're just kind of getting along with it really well. So, well, we're going to wrap up in about 2 or 3 minutes. As I always suspected, of course, the half hour flies by. So what would you leave Michael with a sort of a nugget? I've got a couple ideas that if they heard nothing else that Michael Charest said today to take away, what's a nugget or two for the audience?
I would say number one is, as you kind of brought it today, but focus on the positive. Naturally, look, So let's just pick up where I even left off a minute ago. Like, focus on your daily gratitude ritual. That's you're feeling grateful like first thing in the morning, and looking for ways to feel grateful, to allow every day to unfold where you're feeling more grateful and happy naturally. Like, it's like put in the work in the morning, and your eyes will look at things differently throughout the day. Similarly,
That's okay. Don't worry about it. We're going to wrap up in a second.
and similarly in life, focus on what you can do for others first, and good things will come to you and people doing good things to you. So I'd say put in the work first, and then have the positive expectancy.
Excellent. Very, very well said. Well, thank you so much. And that's going to wrap us up for this episode. And I just put that focus on the positive, your daily gratitude ritual. I love the be grateful for your mother and knowing you wanted to be the best son in the world. I think that's fantastic. So to wrap up, those are some of the takeaways. As I mentioned, I'll be taking the month of May off, and I'll be back in June on June 4th for a weekly podcast. And that is on Transformation Talk Radio every Friday at 12:35 p.m. Wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, etc., please subscribe and give me a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. And as I mentioned, I do gratitude speaking and coaching, and the show notes has the details and the contact information. Also, a lot of people get my Monday morning minute. The people that want to get that, it's a 60-second video, goes out every Monday. If you're interested in getting that in your inbox on Monday mornings, just type gratitude guy into number 22828. So you put 22828 in the text number and the word gratitude guy in the message box. You will get that. My guest on June 4th will be Scott Burns, who's going to share some great stories and inspiration. And then please stay tuned following Mike podcast for the Empowered Through Health podcast with Diane Solano, where you can take your health to the next level, featuring a different variety and health topic every week. If you need a gratitude journal, go to thatgratitudeguy.com. So thanks again for tuning in. Michael, thank you. And until next time, I am David George Brooke, that gratitude guy. Remember, be grateful and never quit. So long.
Thank you for listening to That Gratitude Guy podcast with David George Brooke, where living with gratitude turns what you have into enough. Transformation starts now, and you have everything you need to achieve great things. In a world that is constantly changing, there is motivation and inspiration right in front of us, and you can find yours right now. Don't wait. Visit thatgratitudeguy.com to get started living with gratitude today.